There is a moment in arguments that many people know too well. Your chest tightens, your throat closes, your voice starts to shake, and suddenly, tears are right there threatening to take over the conversation. Not because you are weak, not because you lack confidence, but because your emotions arrived faster than your control. And here's the truth no one says out loud. Crying during an argument doesn't mean you're losing. It means your nervous system is overwhelmed. And overwhelm is not a character flaw. It's a physiological response. The problem isn't the tears. The problem is what happens when tears take control. Arguments trigger the same survival systems as physical danger. Your body doesn't know the difference between emotional threat and real threat. It hears raised voices, feels pressure, senses judgment, and it prepares to protect you. For some people, that protection looks like anger. For others, it looks like shutdown. And for many, it looks like tears. So, the goal is not to stop crying forever. The goal is to regain composure before emotions speak for you. Composure always starts in the body, not the mind. When emotions rise, logic goes offline. That's why trying to think your way out of tears rarely works. Instead, you must slow the body first. The fastest way to do that is your breath. When you feel tears rising, don't inhale deeply. That can increase emotional intensity. Instead, slow your exhale. A long, controlled exhale tells your nervous system that you are safe. Safety is what stops emotional flooding. When your body feels safe, your voice steadies, your thoughts return, your control comes back online. Next, anchor your posture. When emotions surge, people collapse inward, shoulders drop, chest caves, head tilts down. This posture signals vulnerability to your brain, which intensifies emotional response. Straighten gently. Ground your feet. Relax your jaw. This isn't about looking strong for others, it's about signaling stability to yourself. Then comes one of the most powerful tools most people avoid: silence. You do not have to respond immediately. Silence during emotional moments is not weakness. It is restraint. And restraint is power. A pause gives your nervous system time to regulate. It prevents you from saying something driven by emotion instead of intention. Silence protects your dignity. If words must come out, choose fewer of them. Long explanations often leak emotion. Short statements contain it. You don't need to defend your entire position in one breath. You only need to state what matters most, calmly and simply. Another key shift is reframing tears themselves. Many people panic when they feel tears coming, and that panic accelerates the response. Instead, acknowledge internally, this is emotion moving through me, not I'm losing control. Not, this is embarrassing. Just emotion passing through. When you stop judging the emotion, it loses intensity. Grounding techniques are also essential. Bring your attention to something physical: the feel of your feet on the floor, the weight of your body in the chair, the temperature of the air. Emotional overwhelm pulls you into your head. Grounding brings you back into the present moment. The present is always calmer than the story in your mind. One of the most overlooked skills is permission to step away. You are allowed to pause an argument. You are allowed to say, I need a moment to collect myself. That sentence alone is composure in action. It shows awareness, responsibility, and emotional maturity. Walking away briefly is not avoidance, it is regulation. Over time, composure becomes a practiced response. The more often you pause, breathe, ground, and choose silence, the more your nervous system learns that arguments are not emergencies. And when your body stops treating conflict like danger, tears stop feeling uncontrollable. Here's the deeper truth: emotional control is not about suppression. Suppression traps emotion inside. Control allows emotion to exist without letting it drive behavior. You can feel deeply and still remain steady. You can be emotional and still be composed. These are not opposites, they are partners. The strongest people are not the loudest in arguments. They are the calmest. They are the ones who can feel intensity and still choose restraint. They are the ones who don't let emotion hijack their voice, their words, or their dignity. So the next time tears rise, remember this: you are not broken. You are not weak. You are learning control in real time. And every time you pause instead of react, every time you breathe instead of explode. Every time you choose composure over chaos, you are building a strength that no argument can take from you. That is real power. Tears are a signal, not a failure. Yet many people have been taught to see tears as something to hide, suppress, or feel ashamed of, especially during conflict. From an early age, crying is often framed as weakness, loss of control, or emotional immaturity. This belief follows people into adulthood, shaping how they judge themselves in moments of vulnerability. But tears are not a breakdown of character. They are information. They are the body's way of communicating that something inside needs attention. Emotionally, tears emerge when the nervous system reaches a threshold. They are not chosen, they are triggered. When stress, frustration, fear, or grief accumulate faster than the body can process them, tears appear as a release valve. This is not failure, it is regulation. Crying helps the body discharge emotional intensity, restore balance, and protect against overload. The mistake is not in the tears themselves, but in the meaning we attach to them. Many people panic the moment tears arrive. That panic amplifies the response. Thoughts like "I'm losing control," or "they'll think I'm weak" create a secondary wave of emotion that intensifies the physical reaction. Instead of calming the system, self-judgment escalates it. When you treat tears as evidence of failure, your body reacts as if it is under threat, making composure harder to regain. Viewing tears as a signal changes everything. A signal asks to be noticed, not punished. It says that something is happening internally, something important. Maybe boundaries are being crossed. Maybe you feel unheard. Maybe the conversation has touched a deeper emotional layer. Tears often appear not because you are fragile, but because you care. They reflect emotional depth, not deficiency. Understanding this reframes how you respond in the moment. Rather than fighting the tears, you can observe them. You can acknowledge internally that your system is activated. This awareness alone creates distance between you and the emotion. You stop being the emotion and start witnessing it. That shift is where control begins. Control does not mean stopping the emotion. It means staying present while it passes. Tears also reveal patterns. If they consistently arise in certain situations, arguments, authority figures, confrontation, they are pointing to something unresolved. Maybe you were never taught how to express anger safely. Maybe you learned early that speaking up led to conflict or rejection. Tears become the body's workaround when direct expression feels unsafe. Recognizing this allows growth. Signals are useful because they guide change. Social conditioning intensifies shame around tears, particularly in environments that reward composure and emotional restraint. Many people believe they must appear unshaken to be respected, but emotional intelligence is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to navigate it. People who understand their emotional signals respond with maturity, not denial. They adjust boundaries, pace, and communication instead of attacking themselves for feeling. Tears can also serve as protection. When emotions peak, cognitive processing decreases. Crying can interrupt escalation, forcing a pause that prevents harsher reactions. This way, tears are not a loss of control but a form of self-preservation. The body slows the interaction so damage is minimized. Recognizing this reduces resistance and shame. Another important shift is separating emotion from identity. Feeling emotional does not define who you are. Tears are an event, not a label. When you stop attaching meaning like "I'm weak" or "I can't handle conflict," you create room for recovery. You can feel tears and still be strong. Strength is not emotional numbness. It is emotional steadiness over time. Responding to tears with compassion rather than criticism builds resilience. When you allow the emotion without judgment, it often passes more quickly. The body no longer needs to escalate to be heard. Over time, this practice retrains the nervous system. It learns that emotional activation does not equal danger. As a result, emotional responses become less intense and more manageable. Tears are not the enemy of composure. Misinterpretation is. When you see tears as failure, you fight yourself. When you see them as signals, you listen. Listening leads to understanding. Understanding leads to control. Emotional growth begins not with suppression, but with accurate interpretation of what the body is communicating. Ultimately, Tears do not mean you are losing an argument, failing at communication, or lacking strength. They mean your system is processing something meaningful. Strength is not found in erasing that response, but in learning how to stay grounded while it moves through you. When you stop fearing tears and start reading them, they lose their power to overwhelm and become guides toward deeper self-control and emotional clarity. Control starts with your breath, not your words. When emotions surge in an argument, most people try to regain control by choosing the right sentence, the perfect explanation, or the strongest defense. They believe that if they can just say the right thing, the situation will stabilize. But words come after the body. And when the body is overwhelmed, no amount of clever phrasing can restore composure. Breath is the foundation of control because it directly influences the nervous system, which governs emotional response. The moment conflict arises, the body reacts before the mind has time to reason. Heart rate increases, muscles tighten, and breathing becomes shallow and rapid. This physiological shift signals danger to the brain, even if the threat is purely emotional. When this happens, rational thinking goes offline. Speech becomes reactive, defensive, or emotionally charged. Trying to control words without first calming the body is like trying to steer a car while the engine is overheating. Breath is the fastest way to communicate safety to the nervous system. Unlike thoughts, which take time to change, breathing patterns can be adjusted immediately. A slow, deliberate breath, especially a longer exhale, activates the body's calming response. This tells the brain that the situation is manageable. Once the body feels safe, the mind regains clarity. Only then do words become intentional instead of impulsive. Many people instinctively take deep, forceful breaths when they feel emotional. But this can actually increase intensity. What matters is not how much air you take in, but how slowly you release it. A controlled exhale slows the heart rate and reduces tension. This shift can be felt within seconds. The chest softens, the throat relaxes, and the urge to react begins to fade. Breath does what words cannot. It changes the state of the system from the inside out. Breathing also anchors attention. During emotional moments, the mind races ahead, replaying past grievances or anticipating future outcomes. This mental time travel fuels emotional overwhelm. Focusing on the breath brings attention back to the present moment, where control is possible. The present is always calmer than the story in the mind. By anchoring to breath, you interrupt the emotional spiral before it takes over your voice. Control through breath also protects dignity. Emotional speech often includes regretful words, raised volume, or defensive explanation. These responses may feel justified in the moment, but they can damage relationships and self-respect. When you regulate your breath first, you create space between feeling and speaking. That space is where restraint lives. Restraint is not silence out of fear. It is silence out of choice. Breath influences posture and tone as well. Shallow breathing collapses posture and tightens the voice, making it sound strained or unstable. Controlled breathing supports an open chest and steady tone. Without trying to sound calm, you naturally become calm. The voice follows the breath. This is why composure is embodied, not performed. Another overlooked aspect of breath control is its cumulative effect. Each time you regulate your breath during conflict, you teach your nervous system that emotional intensity is survivable. Over time, the body becomes less reactive. Emotional thresholds increase. What once triggered tears or panic becomes manageable. This is not suppression, it is training. Breath becomes a tool for long-term emotional resilience. Breathing also shifts power dynamics in conversation. When one person escalates and the other slows their breath, the tone of the interaction changes. Calm presence often diffuses intensity without a single word. The regulated person becomes the stabilizing force. This quiet authority is far more effective than verbal dominance. It signals confidence, self-control, and emotional maturity. Importantly, breath-based control is accessible to everyone. It requires no external validation, no permission, and no perfect circumstances. It can be practiced silently, unnoticed by others. This makes it a reliable anchor in high-pressure moments. Even when words feel unsafe or emotions feel overwhelming, breath remains available. Control does not mean shutting down emotion. It me guiding it. Breath creates the conditions for guidance. It slows the system, restores clarity, and allows emotion to move without hijacking behavior. When you lead with breath, words become tools rather than weapons. They serve understanding instead of reaction. In moments of conflict, composure is not achieved by saying more or saying better. It is achieved by breathing differently. Control begins the instant you choose to regulate your breath. From that calm foundation, words can follow with intention, clarity, and respect. Breath is the gatekeeper of self-control. And when you master it, you master the moment. Slowing your body slows your emotions. This idea feels simple, yet it is one of the most misunderstood truths about emotional control. When emotions surge, people instinctively try to calm their thoughts, convince themselves to be rational, or force composure through willpower. But emotion does not begin in the mind. It begins in the body. The body reacts first, and the mind follows. That is why lasting emotional control starts with physical regulation, not mental arguments. During conflict or stress, the body accelerates. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, breathing becomes shallow, and movements grow sharper. This physical speed signals urgency to the brain. Urgency tells the nervous system that something is wrong, which amplifies emotion. Trying to slow your thoughts while your body remains in high gear is ineffective. The body must slow first for the mind to follow. When you intentionally slow your body, you send a message of safety to the nervous system. Slower movements, gentler gestures, and reduced tension tell the brain that the situation is not an emergency. This shift changes the emotional trajectory almost immediately. Emotions that feel overwhelming begin to soften, not because they are suppressed, but because the body no longer feeds them urgency. One of the most powerful ways to slow the body is through deliberate movement. Small adjustments make a big difference. Relaxing the shoulders, unclenching the jaw, and softening the hands reduce muscular tension. These areas hold stress instinctively. When they relax, the entire system responds. The body begins to settle, and emotional intensity decreases naturally. Breathing and movement work together. When the body slows, breathing slows. When breathing slows, the heart rate follows. This cascade creates a state where emotions can exist without overwhelming the system. You do not have to stop feeling, you simply stop being flooded by feeling. This distinction is crucial. Emotional regulation is not. Emotional avoidance is emotional containment. Slowing the body also creates time. Emotional reactions thrive on speed. They escalate quickly, pushing words and actions out before reflection can occur. When you slow your physical responses, you create a buffer between impulse and behavior. That buffer is where choice lives. Choice allows you to respond instead of react. It protects your dignity and the integrity of the conversation. Another overlooked benefit of slowing the body is its effect on perception. When the body is tense and fast, the brain interprets the environment as threatening. Neutral expressions appear hostile. Minor disagreements feel like attacks. Slowing the body recalibrates perception. The brain begins to assess the situation more accurately. This clarity reduces emotional intensity and improves communication. Slower body movement also changes how others respond to you. Humans subconsciously mirror physical cues. When you slow down, others often follow. The conversation becomes less volatile, not because of persuasion, but because your regulated presence influences the emotional climate. Calm becomes contagious when it is embodied, not forced. Many people fear slowing down in emotional moments because they associate it with vulnerability or loss of control. In reality, speed is often a mask for fear. Slowing down demonstrates confidence. It shows that you are not threatened by emotion or conflict. You trust your ability to handle the moment. That trust stabilizes the interaction. Over time, practicing physical slowing builds emotional resilience. Each time you regulate your body during stress, you teach your nervous system that it does not need to escalate to protect you. This learning reduces reactivity in future situations. Emotional responses become less intense and more manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes familiar and navigable. Slowing the body is not about appearing calm for others. It is about creating internal conditions where calm becomes possible. It is an act of self-leadership. You lead your body first, and your emotions follow. This approach is far more effective than trying to control feelings through thought alone. Ultimately, emotions are not enemies to be defeated. They are signals amplified by physical state. When the body moves fast, emotions shout. When the body slows, emotions speak at a volume you can hear without being overwhelmed. By choosing to slow your body, you reclaim control not by force, but by regulation. In moments of conflict or stress, the simplest and strongest move is not to say more, but to move less. Silence is safer than saying something you regret. In moments of emotional intensity, words often feel urgent, as if not speaking immediately means losing control of the situation. Many people speak not because they are ready, but because they are overwhelmed by the pressure to respond. In these moments, silence is not avoidance, it is protection. It shields you from reactions that cannot be undone and statements that linger far longer than the emotion that created them. When emotions rise, the brain shifts into a reactive state. Logical reasoning weakens while impulse strengthens. Words spoken from this state are rarely precise. They are often exaggerated, defensive, or emotionally charged. Once released, they cannot be recalled. Silence interrupts this chain reaction. It creates a pause between feeling and expression, allowing intensity to pass before language is deployed. Silence also stabilizes the nervous system. Speaking during heightened emotion requires cognitive effort that the brain is not equipped to handle under stress. Pausing reduces mental load and gives the body time to regulate. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and clarity gradually returns. This physiological shift is essential for composure. Silence becomes a tool for recovery, not withdrawal. Many people fear silence because they believe it signals weakness, guilt, or surrender. In reality, silence signals self-control. It communicates that you are aware of your internal state and unwilling to act impulsively. This restraint often shifts the power dynamic. Instead of escalating the conflict, silence slows it. It removes fuel from the emotional fire and prevents further damage. Silence also protects relationships. Words spoken in anger can permanently alter how others perceive you. Even if later apologized for, they leave impressions that are difficult to erase. Silence prevents these emotional scars. It preserves trust and respect by ensuring that when you do speak, your words are intentional and measured. Restraint, in this sense, becomes an act of care. Another important function of silence is perspective. Emotional moments narrow focus. You see the situation through the lens of hurt, fear, or frustration. Silence widens that lens. It allows you to consider context, intent, and long-term consequences. This broader view leads to wiser responses and more constructive communication. Silence creates the space necessary for reflection. Silence is also an act of self-respect. Choosing not to speak when overwhelmed honors your emotional limits. It acknowledges that clarity cannot be forced. This self-awareness builds confidence over time. You learn that you do not need to prove your point immediately or defend yourself in every moment. Trusting silence reinforces internal stability. In conflict, silence often invites de-escalation. When one person pauses instead of reacting, the emotional rhythm changes. The other person may slow down, reconsider their tone, or reflect. Silence can disrupt negative cycles more effectively than argument. It introduces calm without confrontation, which is often the fastest path to resolution. It is important to distinguish between intentional silence and emotional withdrawal. Intentional silence is temporary and purposeful. It is a choice made to protect clarity and composure. Withdrawal avoids engagement altogether. The difference lies in intention. Silence used wisely leads back to conversation when both parties are ready. It is not an end, but a bridge. Silence also enhances credibility. People trust those who speak with intention rather than impulse. When you are known for pausing before responding, your words carry more weight. They are seen as thoughtful and deliberate. Over time, this reputation strengthens your influence and authority. Silence becomes part of your communication style, reinforcing calm confidence. Learning to use silence requires practice. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially in emotionally charged situations. But discomfort does not mean danger. It means growth. Each time you choose silence over reaction, you strengthen your capacity for self-control. This skill compounds, making future moments easier to navigate. Ultimately, silence is not the absence of communication. It is the foundation of responsible communication. It ensures that words are spoken from clarity rather than chaos. In moments when emotion threatens to take over, silence offers safety for you, for the conversation, and for the relationship. Saying nothing at the right time is often the most powerful thing you can do. Grounding brings composure back to the moment. When emotions surge, the mind rarely stays present. It jumps backward to past hurts or forward to imagined outcomes. This mental drift fuels emotional intensity and makes composure feel impossible. Grounding interrupts this pattern by anchoring attention in the present, where control actually exists. It is not a distraction from emotion. It is a return to stability. Emotional overwhelm often feels like being pulled out of your body and into your thoughts. The more you think, the faster emotions escalate. Grounding reverses this by bringing awareness back to physical sensation. The body exists only in the present moment. By reconnecting with it, you disengage from mental spirals that amplify emotion. This shift alone can reduce emotional intensity significantly. Grounding works because it engages the senses. Noticing the feel of your feet on the floor, the weight of your body in a chair, or the texture of an object in your hand sends signals of safety to the nervous system. Safety slows emotional response. When the body feels secure, the mind regains clarity. This process happens quickly, often within seconds, because it bypasses overthinking. One of the strengths of grounding is its subtlety. It does not require visible actions or verbal explanations. You can ground yourself quietly in the middle of a conversation. A small shift in attention, pressing your feet into the ground or relaxing your shoulders, can change your internal state without anyone noticing. This makes grounding a reliable tool in high-pressure moments. Grounding also restores a sense of control. Emotional overwhelm often includes the fear of being carried away by feeling. Grounding reminds you that you are still here, still present, and still capable of choice. This awareness reduces panic and restores confidence. You may still feel emotion, but it no longer dictates your behavior. Another benefit of grounding is improved perception. When emotionally flooded, perception narrows. You may misinterpret tone, intention, or meaning. Grounding widens perspective by calming the nervous system. With calm comes accuracy. You begin to hear what is actually being said rather than what your emotion assumes. This clarity improves communication and reduces unnecessary conflict. Grounding also supports physical regulation. Emotional intensity often creates muscle tension, shallow breathing, and restlessness. By focusing on bodily sensations, you naturally release tension and slow breathing. This physical shift reinforces emotional regulation. Body and mind realign, creating a stable internal environment for thoughtful response. Over time, grounding builds resilience. Each time you ground yourself during stress, you reinforce neural pathways associated with calm response. The nervous system learns that emotional activation does not require panic or avoidance. This learning reduces reactivity in future situations. Grounding becomes less effortful and more instinctive with practice. Grounding is also a form of self-compassion. It acknowledges that overwhelm is not a failure, but a signal. Instead of criticizing yourself for feeling too much, you respond with care and presence. This compassionate response shortens recovery time and strengthens emotional trust within yourself. In conversations, grounding can shift the entire dynamic. When one person remains present and regulated, the interaction stabilizes. Calm presence invites calm response. Without saying anything, grounded energy influences the emotional tone of the exchange. This impact is subtle but powerful. Grounding does not eliminate emotion. It creates space around it. In that space, emotion can exist without overwhelming the system. You gain the ability to feel without losing composure. This balance is the essence of emotional intelligence. Ultimately, grounding returns you to the only place where control is possible, the present moment. The past cannot be changed, and the future cannot be managed in emotional distress, but the present offers breath, awareness, and choice. By grounding yourself, you reclaim composure not through force, but through presence. In moments of intensity, grounding is not just a technique, it is a return to yourself. Emotional control is strength, not suppression. Many people misunderstand what it means to be emotionally strong. They assume strength looks like hiding feelings, staying unaffected, or never showing emotion at all. This belief leads to suppression, pushing emotions down, ignoring them, or pretending they do not exist. Suppression may look composed on the surface, but it creates internal tension and eventual emotional overflow. True strength is not the absence of emotion, it is the ability to experience emotion without being ruled by it. Emotional control begins with acknowledgement. When emotions arise, the instinct to suppress them often comes from fear of appearing weak, losing control, or being judged. But emotions do not disappear when ignored. They accumulate. Suppression delays expression, not resolution. Control, on the other hand, allows emotions to be recognized without letting them dictate behavior. This distinction is crucial. Strength lies in awareness, not denial. Controlled emotion moves through the system. Suppressed emotion gets trapped. Over time, trapped emotion manifests as anxiety, irritability, exhaustion, or sudden emotional outbursts. These reactions are often misunderstood as personality flaws when they are actually signs of unprocessed emotion. Emotional control prevents this buildup by allowing feelings to exist in a regulated way. You feel the emotion, but you remain grounded while feeling it. Another key difference between control and suppression is choice. Suppression is reactive. It happens out of discomfort. Control is intentional. It happens out of self-leadership. When you practice emotional control, you decide how and when to express emotion. You are not silencing yourself. You are choosing timing, tone, and context. This choice preserves dignity and effectiveness in communication. Emotional control also enhances clarity. Intense emotion narrows perception and distorts interpretation. When you regulate emotion instead of suppressing it, clarity improves. You can understand what you are feeling and why. This understanding informs better decisions and healthier boundaries. Suppression removes access to this information, leaving confusion and internal conflict. Strength through emotional control also shows up in relationships. Suppression often creates emotional distance. People sense when emotions are hidden, and this can reduce trust and connection. Controlled emotion, however, fosters honesty without volatility. You can express feelings clearly and calmly, which deepens understanding and respect. This balance builds stronger, more resilient relationships. There is also a physical component to emotional control. Suppression often involves tightening the body, holding the breath, or bracing against feeling. This physical tension reinforces emotional stress. Control, by contrast, involves softening the body, regulating breath, and staying present. These physical shifts support emotional processing and reduce strain on the nervous system. Culturally, emotional suppression is often praised, especially in high-pressure environments. Composure is mistaken for numbness. But numbness is not stability, it is disconnection. Emotional control allows engagement without overwhelm. It enables you to stay connected to yourself and others, even in difficult moments. This engagement is where true resilience lives. Another important aspect of emotional control is self-trust. When you know you can feel deeply without losing control, fear of emotion diminishes. You stop bracing against feelings and start working with them. This trust reduces anxiety and increases confidence. You are no longer afraid of your own emotional responses, which frees mental and emotional energy. Emotional control also evolves with practice. Each time you respond calmly instead of reacting impulsively, you reinforce neural pathways associated with regulation. Over time, emotional responses become less intense and more manageable. This is not because you feel less, it is because you manage better. Growth shows up as stability, not silence. Suppression often leads to delayed consequences. Controlled emotion leads to timely processing. When emotions are acknowledged and regulated, they resolve more efficiently. There is less need for dramatic release because the system does not become overloaded. Control prevents emotional debt from accumulating. Ultimately, emotional strength is not about shutting down feelings or appearing unaffected. It is about remaining present, aware, and intentional in the face of emotion. Emotional control honors what you feel without surrendering to it. It allows emotion to inform, not dominate. This balance is the mark of true strength: steady, grounded, and resilient.